When we make these small little compromises, what it does is it creates little micro cracks in our future marital foundation. When we do these things, they don't seem like that big of a deal. I mean, come on, we're gonna get married, so we're just, it's more convenient, we're saving money. I mean, whatever they are, what you're training and teaching your future marriage, is that we're willing to make compromises. And what we've seen, why there's a 50% higher divorce rate for couples who cohabitate compared to those who don't, is because of those micro cracks.
All right, friends, we are back for this week's culture segment. If you listened last week, you know that this week we are continuing a conversation with Dr. Greg Smalley, VP of Marriage here at Focus on the Family, my boss. And we have been talking about cohabitation. And so we started this conversation last week. We are continuing it this week. And just really great. I mean, Greg has not only good statistics around this, around why does this matter culturally. We're going to get a little bit this week into biblically God's heart for why he has asked us to follow parameters around his views on marriage, man and woman, sexuality, a lot of that. But also just what it looks like to, I mean, you could fill in the blank with sex, with cohabitation, with whatever, about what it looks like to honor God in our decisions and how we live our lives. And in our culture, this is becoming increasingly difficult. So Greg has written about 1 billion books. He has a doctorate in psychology. I did give him a hard time last week saying that his wife, Erin, is almost done with her doctorate. And so then it's going to be just cage match straight up as to who even knows
wins.
this stuff. She wins? Okay.
I just take my rightful place as a trophy husband, and that's it.
Okay. Well, she's so important. She couldn't be here today, so Greg's here. No, he's fantastic and has so much insight into this. And I love it. I said this last week, too, how it's really from both sides of the proverbial aisle, because we're talking about cohabitation among people who are unmarried, but the decisions you make now play into your marriage and how you relate to your future spouse.
Absolutely.
And so Greg, I promised last week as we finished out that I would have you tell the story of a guy that you met at one of your speaking engagements who kind of came up and challenged you and was like, dude, the stuff I'm hearing about cohabitation is just not enough. This is lame. I'm going to have to live with someone and you're going to have to convince me otherwise. How did that conversation start and really kind of what went down? Yeah,
I loved it. So this young man came up and he said, everything you and Erin have been talking about, that we do that. We practice that. We have that. That's a part of our relationship. We're just not married. We don't need the piece of paper. He goes, so convince me of why I should marry her. And so now remember, these are these small, tiny little breaks at an event. And so, and there are lines of, of people. So, so I said, okay, so your first job, so here's your assignment. And then come up at the next break. I said, what do you really want for her ultimately? Everything aside, like when you really think about this person that you're wanting to spend your life with, living with, what do you really want for her? And so next break he came up and oh man, he went all Genesis 2:24 on me. I knew he was going to like Google or AI something. So he said, I want exactly what it says in Genesis 2:24, that is we leave our family and join together, in this relationship, so living together, not in marriage. He goes, I want us to be one. I want that deep, deep connection. I long for us to be truly just experience the depths of that intimacy and connection. Again, everything you're talking about. I said, okay, great. And in my mind, I knew I had him. I was hoping he'd come back with something like that. Because Lisa, here's the reality is that I've seen is that people who are cohabitating together at some level will always doubt and wonder about this person's commitment. Even if that person swears, man, we don't need the piece of paper, but man, I'm in this for the long haul. Without that covenant, without standing before friends and family and making those vows, I mean, all of what the marriage ceremony represents. I mean, Aaron and I stood before the Lord and said, we enter into a covenant, God, that this is for a lifetime. We stood up in front of friends and family. They're committed to our marriage as well. Without that, a person will always at some level doubt. They'll always feel some level of insecurity. They won't really feel that safe. And so they won't truly be willing to be fully known and fully seen. Because he's saying, hey, I want intimacy. Well, intimacy, it's slow it down, intimacy. It's this idea of really being able to, within a relationship, offer all of who you are. And then the trust that this person's going to take all of what's true about you, all the good, the bad, the ugly, the scars, the mistakes, the sin, all of that, and who will unconditionally love and accept you through all that. Well, the only way a person ever will let you truly see all of who they are is that they have to feel completely secure and safe within this relationship. And so I laid that out for him, saying, so if that's really what you want for her, you're setting up a system that could never provide that. I said, I don't care what you say. The fact that you haven't made that choice to marry her means that she's never going to feel fully safe and fully secure, which means you're never going to get her full heart. Just accept that. And if that's okay with you, then that's okay. But you're telling me you want something different. Lisa, in terms of the security, there are over 1,000, so 1,000 plus benefits and protections both at the federal level and the state level for those who get married. There aren't those for couples who are just simply cohabitating. So you think it even at that level of what the state and the feds give you when you enter into that covenant, that marriage relationship, all that helps people feel safe and secure. They're more willing to let you really see who they really are. Otherwise, they're not going to get there.
Yeah. And it's so fascinating because you see this innately, even in, we were jokingly talking last week about Hollywood and this ridiculous crafting of stories that they have and how amazing it's going to be, regardless of the fact that you have known this person for 2.5 minutes or whatever. But I was just thinking as you were saying this and talking about your encounter with this guy, there is a movie, y'all, He's Just Not That Into You, that chronicles a number of different couples and their trials and travails in their own relationships. And one couple, the Jennifer Aniston, Ben Affleck couple, he is dead set against marriage. And he is an amazing guy. And he's just like, I'm great. We're great. This is all fine. We don't need to get married. It's a piece of paper. It's ridiculous. It's a societal construct. And she just really wants to get married and wants to get married. Well, the end of the movie, she gives up that dream because she's dated losers who are willing to marry her, but they're just jerks. And so she says, it's okay. I love you for who you are, blah, blah, blah. And she decides that she's going to settle, but then because the movie has to end well and it has to hit the heartstrings of all the women who are watching it, he comes around with a ring, and it's almost like this weird contract of, okay, you proved yourself, I'm going to prove myself, but it ends with a ring and it ends with marriage, and they're so grateful for this. And I'm like, you can see how even innately we want that. It's men and women who want that and see what you're saying, the security there. Even more importantly than he's just not that into you. We won't use that as gospel truth. But the story of Ruth and Boaz tells this. It's a biblical narrative of how, aren't you the one that told me, every single twist and turn in that story is him securing her safety.
Exactly. That's the beauty of this story, is that when Naomi, Ruth's mother-in-law, so when her son, one was Ruth's husband, when they die, so they end up moving back to where Naomi was from. And so when they get there, I mean, they have nothing. No one is providing for them. Yep. And so Ruth on her own says, well, I'll go and pick up, wheat, grain from as the harvesters are going. They would allow people to stay way behind and just kind of gather what was left over. Yep. Usually it wasn't the cream of the crop, the top shelf kind of wheat or grain. And so Boaz sees her doing this. Who is this girl? And then he had heard that she was there supporting her mother-in-law, and he's like, oh, that's really cool. Hey, actually, let her do that. He goes and tells her, hey, tomorrow you come back. I want you to be at my field because I've told my workers to not mess with you. If you go to another field, the guys, they may harm you, they may assault you. That will not happen here. Day after day, she was faithful to provide for her mother-in-law. That touched his heart. So then he would tell her, he told his crew, actually drop some good stuff. I want her to have the top shelf, the best. And at every step in their relationship, he was doing things to help her to feel safe, to help her feel secure. And ultimately, man, that's the moment that touched her heart. And she went, this is the guy that I want to pick, someone who's willing to make me feel that safe, that secure along the way. And that's I think the meta narrative of their story is how Boaz just understood. I mean, there's way more to it, but the essence was that everything he did was to help her to feel safe, and that opened her heart. She felt safe, and ultimately said, "I want to spend the rest of my life with you." Yeah. And then remember, their baby that they had together was David's David's father, and so that entered her into the lineage of Jesus. His safety. That's the power. I'm telling you, if I only had 1 hour to sit with a couple who needed help within their premarital or within their marriage, that's all I would talk about. Yeah. Is how do you create a marriage that feels like the safest place on earth? Because you're going to get that access to their hearts. They will open to you. And I want to say, not there are people who bring in such wounds that they're going to stay behind the walls even within a covenant marriage commitment. I get that. Yeah. But without that, though, right. So that spoke to this young man that came up at the break, and he was like, I've never thought about it that way, and that I do want her to feel fully safe, fully secure. Yeah. And I said, so what are you waiting for? And this sounds like I'm making this up because it's like a Hollywood ending. Yeah. But he did come up to me at the very end, and he said, I've already talked to her and going ring shopping after the event. So I don't know what happened. Yeah. But it sure seemed that he got the point is that here, I deeply want to see her, know her, and that will never happen if she doesn't feel fully safe, fully secure. Yeah.
So while we said last week, and we're saying again this week, that we're trying to have this conversation to kind of turn on its ear some of the more tired narratives that we've heard, or people are just like, oh, well, that's fake, or that doesn't matter, or whatever. Another thing that I really love and alluded to kind of in the beginning here is when we're talking about, usually if people decide that they want to sin, they're going to sin. Yeah. But it's like for people that truly say they want to honor God in their hearts and they want to honor God with obedience in their decisions, in their actions, which you guys does matter. Like God is not sitting there not caring whether or not we obey him. Okay. This is a thing. This isn't just like, well, try, but otherwise I'm not really powerful enough to actually help you make right choices and stuff like that. I also really like, Greg, how you make an argument against cohabitation by you use the illustration of a dam and what you call micro cracking, and why
this was family friendly programming. What did you say?
I know. I said dam.
Oh, the thing that holds back water.
Sometimes we say
gotcha.
Dam. Yeah. Here at Boundless, sometimes we say dam. Okay, but I thought this was really helpful too, because it's a foreshadowing of how a person may act in the future. Yeah. Again, you think that you're marrying the most amazing person in the world who would never betray you, who would never make a wrong decision, who would never do you dirty.
That we talked about last time, yeah.
But it's really indicative of the way things could go, the way a person's character is, their heart is. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think, and this is really relevant to Christian couples who know that this is not God's desire. Mm-hmm. He doesn't want us cohabitating. He doesn't want us having sex. So, but what happens when we make that choice? When we make these small little compromises, what it does is it creates little micro cracks in our future marital foundation. So much like a dam, when we do these things, they don't seem like that big of a deal. I mean, come on, we're going to get married. So we're just, it's more convenient. We're saving money. I mean, whatever they are, what you're training and teaching your future marriage, is that we're willing to make compromises. And what we've seen, why there's a 50% higher divorce rate for couples who cohabitate compared to those who don't, is because of those micro cracks, because we were willing to compromise here. And so later on, when certain things came up or decisions, choices that we had to make, we were much more willing to make those small little compromises. Well, maybe I don't really have to report your tip income that you got or whatever. But we see that again and again is that you're creating all these little cracks. And so you're not strengthening, you're weakening your foundation. You're training the relationship that, well, we compromised here, so why wouldn't we do it next time? The individuals see that, they know that, they've experienced that, and now they're wondering, well, it worked. How will I know that you're not going to be, carrying on an inappropriate conversation with a coworker, whatever, things like that. And so that's we don't usually talk about that. I always tell Lisa, if you don't like how you're being treated in a relationship, the first place to start is to take a look at how have I been training this person that it's okay to treat me that way. Not that we're responsible for what people do and how they treat us, but at some level, we're constantly teaching, training people on how to treat us. That's the same for our relationship. We're training our marriage what's okay and what's not. And man, God is a God of restoration. So we can do this differently. And even if you have cohabitation in your marriage history, that's part of your love story, man, you can make that right between you and the Lord. You can make different choices. You can repair those micro cracks. I'm not saying, hey, once you do it, you've got this weak dam holding back all of the water that's going to come against you guys over the course of your marriage. It's not that way, but it's good to know that they're there. And therefore, we're going to need to make some repairs along the way to deal with that.
And so I want to talk about that here for a couple minutes. The whole idea of how do we have this conversation in our friend groups, in the church, because there are a lot of people. I mean, I remember talking to a friend who was mentioning that, in her small group, there were a couple of couples living together. And it's like, short of running through the church lobby and pointing fingers and yelling fornicator, I mean, what are we...
I mean, that's one way to go.
I mean, maybe I've done that. I don't know. No, I haven't. But short of doing like something really wild or inappropriate, what does it look like to have an honest conversation that's also grace-filled with couples in the church who are just like, either they're like, oh, didn't even know, or didn't care, or walk up to you at a conference, tell me differently. What does it look like to even have these, as couples are maybe getting mentors in the church and asking these questions? What's a kind but firm, grace-filled way to broach this subject?
Yeah, I think so much of it is we need to be educated, because I think so much of why a couple is choosing this is that they've been misinformed. They don't understand that, to test drive something actually creates the opposite. You're now entangled. You've got so much riding on this relationship working that now you're not even noticing what might be going on. That's probably is a good reason to end this relationship. What if couples who cohabitate, we know this, it doesn't matter if secular Christian, everybody who studied this, they find the same thing, that couples who live together before marriage have a much, much higher divorce rate than those who don't. Like, talk about that going, wonder why do you think that is? Like, I'm not telling you you're going to divorce, but it's interesting. I wonder what's going on. I wonder why that creates that. We know that couples who live together, as you study both groups who didn't and who did, the couples that live together, they form really poor communication patterns, especially around conflict. There's a kind of sliding ultimately into this relationship, and so there's not a real strengthening. There's a lower level of commitment. Again, they've weakened their foundation. I mean, there's a lot going on. So to be able to have an honest conversation, just saying, I'm not telling you what to do, but here's what I've heard, and here's what I've studied, here's what I've read, and did you know this? Now, again, remember we said in the beginning last week that there's this idea of that couples, we believe that we're the exception, man, that we've got the love story that will stand the test of time, and doesn't matter if we live together, we're going to make it. Divorce won't happen to us. So just know that's who you're talking to. but have that real honest conversation. I think too, to offer practical support, like some of my favorite stories is when my wife she has private practice, so works with married couples. When she does some premarital, if the couple tells her that they're living together, she encourages them to, before the wedding, to stop, like to take a break and really let's focus in on, honoring God, making sure that we're living a relationship that's pure. I mean, all those things. Like she's saying, you can undo some of the effects that you've now acquired. Some of those micro cracks, we can repair those by one of you moving out. And so even like the church, okay, a beautiful thing to do. I have an extra room in my basement.
Sure.
I mean, I'm not saying that everybody has to allow that couple, but it's things like that going,
make it
man, do I
possible.
know someone who maybe just, kids just left, got married, left for college? Is there a room maybe that they'd be willing to let this the guy maybe live in for the next couple months before they get married? I mean, that's how we can show up and not just say, well, don't do it. And here's why. Here's the honest truth why, which is good. But even, let's help them figure out then an alternative.
Yeah.
Because probably a lot of why they're doing it is because it's super convenient. It's much cheaper to combine incomes in a place that we're, now living in together. So I get it. Yeah. So let's be not only the bearers of truth in correct information, but let's step up and help them.
Help them be successful. So kind of as we finish here, Greg, in our last minute or two, give a vision, and you kind of started it here, but for the person who's listening, who is living with their boyfriend or their girlfriend right now, and maybe they're like, okay, well, I already blew it. No bit, it's not really going to help me at this point, or I don't even know, maybe I'm living with this person and I'm trying to, I don't know if we should stay together or whatever. What are some next steps for them? Like, what can it look like for them to get the appropriate counsel, for them to be a person who's like, can we do this differently? Does it mean that they, move out tonight? Kind of give them some hope for what it will look like differently, like really a motivation of like, okay, you will actually see tangible changes in this, and then how they can make it practically possible.
Yeah, well, honoring God and honoring your future marriage, that if you're going to err on a side, err on that side.
Yeah.
I mean, you're only setting yourself up for great success. Know that those cracks, those micro cracks that you guys have created by your choice, those can be repaired. Make that commitment towards purity sexually, that for until we get married, for whatever number of weeks, months, that we're going to abstain from that, because we're going to honor each other, honor the Lord, honor our future marriage. And we're going to start, that's healing balm. I don't know what you put on a dam to heal the cracks, but whatever that is, that's what you're doing. Make that commitment. One of you move out and go live with a friend, go back to, parents, whatever. Find, someone at church who's got a room, they'll rent you for cheap, or maybe if they find out what you're doing and why you're doing it, they'll give it to you for free. Do that because you're investing, you're nourishing the relationship to heal it, to walk into your relationship then with the best possible outcome. You're protecting it. And I love that Hebrews 13:4, Lisa, we talk about that verse all the time. The marriage should be honored by all. This is how you begin to do that. God's going to bless that. It's not that you're not going to have challenges. It's just setting you guys up for success. You're showing each other whereas we were willing to make some compromises before, we're not willing to do that. That's speaking volumes and setting you guys up when you hit these issues where you'll have to make decisions later, to remember back to go, here's who we were then. And we can do that now. It's a tough choice, but we know how to make that tough choice.
Yeah. And I think too, kind of implied in that is that there might be you might choose to move out, to not cohabit, all of that. And it might give you some objective clarity on your relationship that may help you determine that this isn't the best fit for you moving forward in the future.
And go get premarital. That's exactly why. To
get
help
your
you
head
guys
in the
figure this
game
out.
and declutter all of the, the hormones, the emotions, the physical that's maybe clouding what really needs to be a very God-centered decision about whether or not you move forward with this person. And that's a hard thing to do. You may not even want to know the answer to that, but it will only serve you and your eventual future spouse, I think, to get that clarity and figure out, is this the right person for you? So great.
Well said.
Great thoughts there, Greg. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Awesome contribution. And just
thanks for talking about this.
Yeah.
We don't talk about this enough as a Christian culture. So thanks for your courage to do that.
We want to talk about it. So really our privilege to have you and really the great word pictures and the insight and the, again, compassion-filled advice for those who might be right in the middle of this right now. So that's awesome. Greg, thanks again.
Thank you.